The following podcast is a Jill Devine Media production.
Christianity has become known for judgy people, strange words, ancient stories, confusing rules, and a members-only mindset. This is why I stayed away from the church for so long, but it's not supposed to be that way. I'm Jill Devine, a former radio personality with 3 tattoos, a love for a good tequila, and who's never read the entire Bible. Yet here I am hosting a podcast about faith. The Normal Goes a Long Way podcast is your home for real conversations with real people using real language about how faith and real life intersect. Welcome to the conversation. The conversation with Todd Larkin and Andy Wiggins continues in this week's episode. I encourage you to go back to last week's episode if you haven't had a chance already to listen to that before you continue to listen to this week's episode. So whether you're hitting pause to go do that or you're ready to get into it, let's go ahead and continue the conversation.
You know, that's core to us is it's deeply personal, and either, you can go visit your child, or, if you do go and you have friends who connected you to Hearts and Hope, our hope is that you would also, be there to represent your neighbors and your friends who are also sponsoring a student, and, be their representative to that child and let them know that, I know this person who's sponsoring you and that you're building this relationship with.
When you say it's personal, in the short amount of time that we have made a sponsor decision, yes, I am looking at Derek and his family right now as I talk to you. So I have mentioned this in some of my episodes, but I have this vision board. So yes, I record in my closet and I have a vision board in here, and Derek and his family are in here to just remind me whenever I see him, like, okay, things could be worse, things could be better, but things could be worse. And what does Derek need? And obviously I want to spread the word about Hearts and Hope and all these great things that you're doing. But I also want to represent other people like me who have questions, who are a little confused and concerned about the sponsorship. And by that, I mean, what do I do? How do I be there for Derek? How do I talk about Derek to others? How do I talk about Derek to our own children? And you guys really provided some perspective to me on that, because I didn't know how we addressed Derek in our family. And by that, I mean, when we were at church and we saw that it was the day that you could go and you guys let the people pick who they want to pick. My husband and I looked at each other. We said, yes, we want to do this. And he said, well, why don't we go ahead and do this? And then we'll go get the girls, because they are basically what's known as Sunday school. And I said, well, I think they should be a part of this process. And he said, yeah, you're right. So we went and got them from their Sunday school classes. And the oldest, we said to her, because she would understand, we're like, okay, so we have this opportunity to help a boy or girl in a different country, and they don't have things like you have, and we want to help them. And so would you like an honorary brother or sister? And by surprise, she's like, a brother. And then it didn't even dawn on me until we started getting into the sponsorship. Like, is that right to say? As a mom, how would I feel if somebody was like, oh, they said that your daughter is their honorary daughter, or things like that? So that's another conflict that I think people don't understand or know what to do or how to wrestle with. And I was hoping you could talk me through it and the listener through it.
I think, one of the things that, we talked about, over, I think it was probably over lunch a while back, kind of around this topic is, it's easy to struggle with that because, I'd say in a lot of cases, they are so just grateful, that they're leaning, into the relationship quickly and, kind of wholeheartedly. They can offer appreciation. They can offer, kind of themselves. And so this whole notion of, what do you call them, right? And we always just say, really, it's just, it's kind of like, you're not adopting, them, so they're not your, children. The families and the extended families over there, still have and need to have, the ownership and the responsibility to kind of raise these kids, and they take it and they want it. But leaning in, and I love how you just said that, an honorary, brother or sister, because I think that shows the respectfulness, of the situation, which is, I think a lot of people want to feel like, these kids are part of their, extended families. At the same time, we're not really trying to replace other people in their lives, right? And that's, I think, sometimes where the struggle comes. But I think, what you said, that phrase of honorary, brother, sister, honorary, son or daughter, I think that's wonderful. And then that other thing that I think we mentioned was just how culturally they're so different, to where, I believe we said, we're telling you the story, how everywhere we'd go, everyone's got, like 10 kids, and,
Yes.
and some of that is true, but it's not the way we would have perceived it, because when we hear, oh, this is my son, this is my daughter, right? We're immediately in the US thinking biological.
Yes.
Over there, no, if they have somebody in their family, because it's such a tight-knit family, community and culture, they'll call nieces and nephews sons and daughters. They'll call somebody that, has lost a parent that lives with them and hasn't gone through so-called an official adoption process, right, a son or a daughter. And so you almost, over there, you have to almost unpack, if you really wanted to understand. It's like, okay, well, how many of those kids are yours versus your sisters versus, but for them, I asked this question once, well, why would you not just recognize that as, that's your nephew? Well, in their culture, that would be insulting, because then I'd be treating that child differently than my own, which to me was like a crazy, crazy selfless concept, right? Because here I'm like, well, I'm gonna treat my biological kids different than, my nieces and nephews or children in Uganda that we're trying to help. And you just kind of realize it's just culturally, that's who they are, right? And that's one of the things we love about it. It's incredible.
It's so beautiful. And yes, so beautiful. This is something else we talked about at lunch, that the moms, I mean, I don't want to pass the judgment that the dads aren't in these kids' lives, but when you look at a lot of the stories, from my understanding, there's a lot of fathers that are not present. So what about the moms? Are they wanting people to come and sponsor their children, or do they have kind of a guard up as far as what is expected?
So, for many of these children and their guardians and parents, they're in very, challenging situations. In most cases, they are, I'd say, probably the number one occupation that we have for our families. The guardian or the parent or the aunt is a day laborer, a peasant, and they work in a field, and they're taking care of their kids, their other family members' kids. And in many cases, we've seen situations, even on that first or second trip to Uganda, where a mom has, in one case, she had twin daughters, and she had to make the difficult decision of which one can go to school and which one's going to go with me into the fields and help me earn a living. So when we launch a sponsorship program in a village and look for candidates for that sponsorship program, our team actually goes into that local village, works with the local leaders from the church. If there's a school there, we work with those school leaders as well, and they actually go out and interview the families, understand the situation that they have, to make sure that the kids that are being sponsored are the neediest in the community. So that is truly a blessing, because then mothers don't have to make that difficult decision that I just described. And what we found when we were creating Hearts and Hope, when we started to look at schools and how do they typically run, there are government-run schools that are, a typical classroom is 120 students in a classroom. with one teacher
Oh,
and a blackboard, and it's rote learning, and it is what it is. And if you're very bright, you can perhaps get through, right? In schools that Hearts and Hope helped manage for several years, that typically what happens is you'll fill up a classroom, and about a third of the kids are able to pay their tuition on time. Another third will pay occasionally, and they'll pay, but they'll be in arrears, and eventually they'll make it up. But it's a struggle for them, but they have some level of income. And then there's a third of the kids that never pay. And what ends up happening with them is they'll go to school that first day, and they'll sit in the classroom for several weeks, getting as much education as they can. And then when the bill comes due at the end of the month and their parents haven't paid or they haven't shown up with their school fees, the bursar, the treasurer for the school, chases them away and says, don't come back until you have your school fees. And they'll go back and work in the fields with their parents for several months, earn enough money to come back with school fees, and they'll pay the school fees. And then they'll sit there for another month until the cycle begins again. And what ends up happening is they get a little bit of education spread out over multiple years, but it's not truly, the type of, the level of education needed. And so our Hearts and Hope sponsorship program is intended to focus on those kids who ultimately, wouldn't be able to attend a quality school like this, and pay for their school fees, and so that they don't get chased away. And so it truly is, I will say most parents that are, come into the program view it as a blessing, and are excited to be a part of it, not only just from the paying of their school fees, but also because they now have someone across the world who's investing in their family's life, and they building that relationship. So I would say it's always a challenging question. That's a challenging situation to be in, but ultimately it's a blessing.
I believe that there are going to be many more conversations that can be had between the three of us and even between your team on the development of Hearts and Hope and the development of what's happening in Uganda. So I have tons and tons and tons and tons of questions, which I will save for some other episodes. But as we wrap things up today, I think probably the best thing to wrap up with is that sponsorship. So I don't know if maybe I thought that a sponsorship was always open, or how does that work as far as when somebody can jump on board with that and exactly what they're paying for?
We always have children available for sponsorship. We did a sponsorship drive at Messiah, and that coincided with the launch of a partnership in the village of Butagona. That partnership was launched because we had a generous donor that was willing to invest in the capital infrastructure and build a school, but we needed to fill the school with kids. And so Messiah agreed, hey, we'll do a sponsorship drive, which we can do. Any church or organization that wants to do that will come to your location and host a sponsorship drive, and you can get your organization, your church involved. But we do have children available on our website, heartsandhope.org. And we have 8 villages that we're partnered with. And there's children in every one of those villages that are looking for sponsors. And they either are, and we also highlight students who may have lost their sponsor, where someone has sponsored that student and gotten them several years into their education, but unfortunately weren't able to continue with the commitment. So you can visit our website and click sponsor a child, and you can look at student profiles and across 8 different villages, and select one. Go through the checkout process. You'll get a welcome packet in the mail. That sponsorship program basically pays for a year's worth of tuition. In our primary schools, Hearts and Hope actually helps fund the teacher's salaries. So we pay the teacher's salaries in each of those schools. But your student would get admission to that school, a uniform, quality leather shoes, which for many of them, the school uniform and the shoes, this is their Sunday best. They get meals, lunch every day as well, a mosquito net. We also have the opportunity for people when they do sponsor a student to contribute to our medical fund, which allows us to respond to any acute situations that may come up, any urgent critical care. But we also use that fund to help provide for preventative treatments such as malarial, antifungal, anti-worm medication for the students. So there's opportunities to contribute beyond just the sponsorship program.
Also, when you check out the website, you can see too the social media handles. And I encourage anyone and everyone to follow along, because seeing some of these cool stories, like, it's not all doom and gloom. Like, when I see some of those kiddos singing or playing soccer, it just makes me smile, because it's like, all right, we're all doing something. We're doing something to make these kids have a great day. Like, it's not always the sadness as the hook, you know what I mean? Like, there's good. And when you were talking about the sponsorship too, like, and going back to the whole personal story, I have to say, like, your team is so great at this, where anytime we can have any kind of communication, we're going to get it. Like, I remember getting an email saying, oh, hey, here's a picture of Derek on the day that he got notified that he gets to go to school. And they sent that picture, and it was really cool. It was just like, okay, this is why we do this. Like, this is really awesome.
Yeah, we're very fortunate that we have an incredible staff. We're still very small. We just have 2 full-time and 2 part-time, employees in the U.S. We've got a bigger team over in Uganda, but they care so deeply about, this mission and these kids, that they want to do everything they can to make these connections. And our little tagline when we kind of built this all is develop relationships, create hope, transform lives. And it's kind of sappy or kitschy or whatever you want to call it, but it does start with that relationship piece. And so through those relationships, we are creating hope and transforming lives. And so we take very seriously, doing anything we can to allow people to feel connected to their sponsored child, to the community they're part of or supporting, because we feel the more people feel connected, the more good we're going to, do at the end of the day. And not only will lives be changed in Uganda, but, I think what we also continue to find out is the other mission is people in the U.S. that get involved, their lives change. They feel better about themselves because, they're finding, a way to give back to somebody that just needs a little extra, support or encouragement.
Yeah, I got to tell you that most of the people that you guys know, that I know and work with at the church, I'm like so giddy the day after we sponsored Derek. Like, you guys, look, we're sponsoring a boy. Here's this. Here's pictures of him. Like, and they were smiling and laughing because it reminded them of their first time. And some of them are on their second or third kid. And it just is this really cool, infectious, like, oh my gosh, I'm helping. I'm doing something. This is what I should be doing and I want to do. And it's just really exciting. It's a great organization. And I just want to thank you both for all that you're doing. I mean, it really, truly is saving lives. It's making a difference in other people's lives. It's changing lives. And I cannot wait to just be along this journey with you guys and keep talking about the next 10 years.
Well, we of course appreciate you having us on, getting involved, on a personal level, but your willingness to help, do what you do, exceptionally well, which is, tell stories and kind of get the word out. That's greatly appreciated. That's what this is at the end of the day all about, is introducing more people to, the wonderful people of Uganda. So we appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Jill. I appreciate it.
I really hope that these last 2 weeks of conversations have inspired you to want to do a little bit more. I would love for you to check out Hearts and Hope. If it's not Hearts and Hope, maybe it's another organization, but it is definitely eye-opening to see the difference that you can make. And as I mentioned, we have in our family a personal story now with Derek, and it's something that I just encourage you to learn more about. Whether you want to sponsor a child or just even learn a little bit more about Hearts and Hope or about taking a mission trip with them or someone else, your help means so much more than you even realize. And as I mentioned at the end of last week's episode, they have an event every single August called Party with a Purpose, and it sells out pretty much every single year. This is their biggest fundraising event. And with it being sold out, you can still help out. You can still donate. You can still take part in the silent auction that they have. And all of the information you can find at normalgoesalongway.com. It's in the show notes for this episode and last week's episode. And I just want to thank you. Thank you for considering it. Thank you for anything that you contribute. It really, really, truly makes a difference.